many people in here, it's your first Tableau conference? Awesome.
All right.
Awesome. Welcome. We hope to see you back next year. How many people have been a server admin for less than a year? Oh, great. OK. You are in the right place. How many have been a server admin for less than 2 years? OK. OK. Cool. Basically, this session is for you. And our actual talk is only about half the time because we want to give you time to ask us questions about your specific scenarios. And so please stay if you do have questions, and we will stay afterwards if you do need to ask, but hold them until the end. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
All right, yeah, I'm Kevin Holbert. I'm a strategic sales consultant, which means I get paid to talk a lot about Tableau, which is cool. And I've been with Tableau for about 6 and some change years now. So hopefully I'll be able to answer all your questions today. And then do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Sarah Ranchler. I am in development on the sustaining QA team. So all of those maintenance releases that go out, those are my babies. So if you have issues with the current products, I end up testing that. So I feel your pain as customers, because I feel like I am a Tableau customer at Tableau. But without further ado, I'd like to just pass this on to Kevin to get on with his first 5 things.
All right. So yeah, this is 10 things every server admin should do. This is a fun little session where we're going to tell a little story and then kind of the moral of the story. Hopefully you'll see a situation or scenario in these 10 things where you'll be able to go back next week, hopefully after 3 solid days of sleep, and have an action item that'll make your life better or your user's life better or just make things easier and more efficient for you. I'm going to ask you to hold questions till the end. We will have an extensive amount of time for QA. Some of these slides we'll get through fairly quickly. Others of them will take a little longer. And Sarah's stories are definitely more entertaining than mine, so you can laugh at me and then laugh with her. So, all right. So the first one we're going to talk about is establishing trust. Every relationship requires trust and a mutual understanding of who each person in that relationship is. And the easiest way to establish trust with your users is use SSL. Okay? Even if your server is internal only, I want to see all of you, if I ever run into you in the wild, with SSL on your server. It's going to make sure that your server is trusted, that your users know that this is an official source, this is your Tableau server, and it's going to make sure that all the communication between your end users and your server are going to be encrypted and secure. And I'll leave that up for another moment. It's going to prevent a lot of problems for you, especially if you're putting your Tableau server on the internet. If you do not put an SSL certificate on your server and it is accessible via the internet, I don't like you. Don't do that. Don't do it. It's bad. All right. And you'll notice these slides will be available after the conference. You'll notice that we do have links on every slide to additional documentation that will help you configure these things. So let's talk about projects. And let's talk about groups. And let's talk about data governance. There's a scary term, right? So data governance is policy. It's not software. So how do you implement your data governance in a sensible way in Tableau Server that doesn't turn your job into a daily slog where you're trying to do every single user and every single workbook? So we have projects in Tableau. You've probably seen them. They look like little shared folders. And projects have a cool thing in the permissions. There's a little lock icon. And it says lock the project permissions. What this allows you to do as an administrator is impose your data governance policy from the top down and then lock that project. And then instead of adding individual users, if you instead add groups, and if you use groups by rule or role, now you're able to manage a whole lot of users and what they can and can't do and can and can't see. So if you don't want them exporting data, or if you say, okay, these users are clear to publish, you can do that, and you only have to set that once. So that is projects and groups. So always be setting your permissions at the project level. Don't do it at the workbook level. I know you can, but it's going to make your life a lot more difficult as you scale up and out. Again, I'll leave this up for a moment so people can take pictures if they'd like.
You can hold your questions to the end. We'll definitely get to you.
Yeah. Cool. So this one's about sites. So sites, as a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with sites? Okay, so all of you have read them. How many of you are using sites? Okay, about half. Cool. So the great thing about sites, let's say, for example, that I'm a healthcare organization, and I have that separation of concerns where I have my clinicians who need PHI, healthcare data, right, HIPAA protected, and then I have my billing agents or my operations people. And if I want to make sure that I have two secure separate zones and I've fully separated those concerns, I can use sites to essentially virtualize my Tableau server. Now, users can traverse sites. So if I have a clinician that also needs to be in operations, like a hospital administrator, I can do that. However, no data can ever traverse sites. It's physically impossible because they're stored entirely separately, entirely separate containers in our repository. Sites will allow you to do that. Another use of sites, we see this a lot with our OEMs. And if, for example, you're providing Tableau as a service to your customers, sites are a great way to make sure that Coke's in one place and Pepsi's in another, and they never run into each other because they wouldn't like that. So again, I'll leave this up here. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about identity and identity management. So in Tableau, we have a lot of ways to authenticate our users. We have a lot of ways to store their identities. So we can do local user accounts, so we can store those local and Tableau Server specific. We can pull them from Active Directory. We can pull them from LDAP. And then once we've got those users, that pool of users, we can authenticate them using SAML or Kerberos or OpenID. So we've got a lot of deployment flexibility when it comes to implementing your industry standard with Tableau. So if you're standardized on an SSO platform in your organization, chances are we can make that work with Tableau. So whether it's ADFS or Okta or OneLogin, we have a lot of different options that enable you to get your users in, synchronize your users, whether that's using a script, whether that's using our built-in AD synchronization, or whether it's something that you manually do with like a CSV file and import via the command line. But the moral of the story here is if you have identity management tools, it's going to make you a lot easier to provision your users and do your job as an administrator by leveraging them with Tableau Server. And then also, if you have Active Directory or LDAP, because of our automatic synchronization, if you bring them in at the group level, so for example, let's say that I have a group of analysts, and they have different tools. And so I might have an analyst group in my Active Directory, but I might create an analyst Tableau group to add all those users to, so that I can synchronize those users on a regular basis. So as people join the company or leave the company or transfer to different departments, Tableau Server will automatically update that group membership and move users in and out of that group. And next, this one is my favorite. I always emphasize this one the most because I am what I like to call creatively efficient, or what everybody else calls lazy. That means I only want to solve a problem once. I never want to have to deal with it again. And I don't know about you, but I never thought lazy was a bad word when it comes to that kind of thing, especially if you're an administrator. You know, if you're working in IT, you have the ability to script things. You have the ability to create shortcuts. So, hey, solve the problem once, don't ever solve it again. We have an extensive amount of API calls that you can direct to Tableau Server. Our REST API can do everything that you would ever want to do as an administrator. Make use of it. It's well documented. We've got tons of code samples on github.com/Tableau. A lot of great tools out there, so not just code samples, but a lot of fun toys for administrators and useful tools. But our REST API will make your life a lot easier. So you can update data sources. You can add or remove users. You could build a self-provisioning portal so that your users can add themselves to your Tableau server. Really, the sky's the limit. We've got a lot of API stuff, a lot of goodness there. So I'm just going to say, REST API, REST API, REST API. Cool. So your princess is in another castle. This is a bonus. There are some other sessions you may want to check out. So we have APIs for server admins, REST, extract, TSM, oh my. That is, looks like later today. And we've got using Tableau Server Client and the REST API to automate your workflow. So if you want to dive into what I was talking about and master that REST API, these are great sessions to go. And hopefully we'll make your life easier.
Yeah, and all of our sessions are recorded, so even if you're not ready to dive into the REST API today, maybe in a month or two down the line you can watch these sessions when you're sitting with your IT person or your coder back at home.
So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah and let her be more entertaining than I was.
I hope I live up to that. I'm going to talk about everyone's favorite thing, maintenance, right? Yeah. It's really fun because that's really what your CEOs demand, is that you have a maintenance plan and a log retention plan and all that, right? No. So maintenance tends to be overlooked because it's not what your users are demanding of you, but you can get yourself backed into a corner real quick if you don't have a plan. So I actually had a customer that called in and they said, our disk went dead on our server. So everything that was on that hard drive was gone. And I said, no problem. We'll just spin up a new machine, put that TS back on there. We'll get you up and running in a couple hours. He said, I don't have one, Sarah. I said, really? You don't? He said they were all on that drive. They were in a different folder. That was safe, right? So not only did he have to buy donuts for his IT team to create him new machines, he also had to go and engage his content administrators to have them republish and recreate everything that was on the server. That took weeks. And it was something that we could have recovered from in a couple hours had he just had a little bit of a foresight. So that is my call to action for you, is if you don't have a plan for taking regular backups or logs, that you start doing that. And our community is great. There are a lot of people out there who have scripted these things, so you can actually just steal that. So I recommend that you do not reinvent the wheel when you don't need to. Just like Kevin said, leverage what other people have done and utilize their best practices, because we all want to sleep at night. This is your bonus. TSM is pretty new. How many people are on Linux? Okay, not many. Okay, so you're all Windows people. Cool. So this is for you. If you're on Linux, you've been using TSM since the beginning. So you can just zone out right now. But if you're on Windows, we've been using tab admin. Now this is not like Mario and Luigi. They're not the same, but just a different color. These are completely different portals and ways to interact with your server. And they both have pros and cons, but before you move from a tab admin environment to a TSM environment, there is some work that you need to do. And I recommend that you create a dev environment and then practice using TSM a couple times. Because even for me, there was a big learning curve. The other thing about TSM is that if you have extensive scripting for tab admin, that is not going to work anymore. So you will need to redo your scripts to call TSM. And it's not too big of a deal because you can actually automate a lot more in TSM, which is awesome. But you do have to do a little bit work up front. So I have listed the tab admin to TSM upgrade help, but you really just need to try it out, figure it out for yourself, ask questions, because it is so different. This one is about having too much of a good thing. So you get your server running, and then people start publishing, and then one morning you come to work, and you're getting all these emails that your disk is filling up, and then you've got a line of people at your desk asking why they can't log into your server? Has anyone here run out of disk space with Tableau Server? Yeah. Does it like it? Yeah. It gets pretty upset. And we do have alerts that you can set up so that you can automatically be emailed anytime your disk runs below a certain threshold. Yep, and then you can actually dynamically add disk space if you have a virtual machine. That's what a lot of people do. Other options are just to add a second machine. But what I recommend you do is to figure out how long things should be out there. You know, you need to make a clear decision, like, should I keep a dashboard out there for 6 months if it hasn't been viewed at all? You know, these are questions that you need to ask, but in order to do that, you need to become familiar with our Postgres repository. And there are lots of custom visualizations that people have built for our backend database. So you can just leverage that, publish it to your own server, and connect it to your Postgres. And then you can ask and answer questions like this. So when you're just trying to kill a data source, it's not going to work. You need to automate these things, just like Kevin was saying. REST API, REST API, REST API. Sometimes it's the things that you don't know that are the most important. And I think some people do overlook our backend database because it's sort of hidden. We don't really advertise a lot of it. But lately, we have been publishing our data library so you can get more familiar with our Postgres repository. So my advice to you is that you get your feet wet, get PG admin, start diving in, looking in that database, asking questions, answering them, so that you know what's going on in your server. The one word of warning I have is sometimes people think they know everything about the database. And I had one customer just start deleting things out of there. He said, oh, I don't need this. I don't need that. And he deleted the guest account, and so his server just stopped working. And then he called and said, my server's broken. I'm like, really? How'd that happen? He didn't really want to tell me. I had to kind of drag it out of him. But eventually he admitted his mistake, and he did have a backup. So we were able to resolve that situation. But don't assume that you can just go in there willy-nilly and delete things, because there are some secrets that we don't share with the world. And if you delete a certain row, it may cause some issues. This one is pretty funny. We had a customer call and say, our server is slow at 10 a.m. Really? Just 10 a.m.? Yeah, that's the only time we get complaints about it being slow. Really? Who's complaining? Oh, our executives. What are they doing at 10 a.m.? Oh, they're having their executive meeting at 10 a.m. And they're all loading vises. And so I took a look at their server. They had 75 extracts that kicked off at 10 a.m. And that was just the 10 a.m. schedule. They had like hundreds at 11, 12, 1. But the other users had sort of just gotten used to this and were using the server at the ends of the hours to work around this issue. But the only people that screamed loud enough were the executives. So I said, well, you could change those schedules maybe. Maybe put a little bit lighter load on the top of the hour, space them out even every half hour or 15 minutes to give the server a little bit of time to, recover. They didn't like that idea. They said, IT said these need to go here, this needs to go here, that's their job. My job is to make sure my executives are happy at 10 a.m. And I said, okay, well, let's get you another machine. So that's what they did. They just added another node to their server, and they dedicated backgrounder processes to that node. And this may be a problem that you don't have yet, but you might have later on. Because as Tableau becomes more ingrained in your everyday, it just really balloons, especially with extracts loads. So this is a really simple way to expand your environment and make everyone a little bit happier. This is my favorite. Basically, people always ask me questions about what's in those logs. How do I find this in the logs or that in the logs? And I'm like, I don't know. Do you know what's in the logs? Yeah, I don't know. There's like, a lot of words and numbers and stuff. So we had a customer have a P1 issue where they came in on a Monday and all of their users had been deleted. So the admins couldn't even log in. And it was really brutal because they were kind of tied to IT, creating these accounts and things like that. So they had to basically wait to be able to resolve this on their own. And they said, Sarah, who did it? I want to know. Tell me who did it. And I'm like, I don't know who did it. You just sent me like 8 gigs of logs. Like, when did this happen? I don't know. Okay. So there are ways that you can just figure out how to find these things. And so I'm going to teach you guys how to fish for things in the logs. If you've ever used Fiddler or Postman to capture HTTP traffic, this is going to be a great tool for you. What I did was I just opened up Fiddler and then connected to my server and deleted some users. And then in Fiddler, it's capturing that traffic. And I can see the request that I sent to delete those users. So now I know what it looks like when we send that. And so I copy that, look for that in the logs. And there was only 1 row in the Apache logs for that action. And the cool thing about our gateway logs is that at the end of the HTTP request, we have a GUID. So as soon as you know which line it is, grab that GUID, and you'll find everything in the logs related to that one request. So I figured out who did it. And then I called them, and I said, do you really want to know? And they said, yes, we want to know. This is a big problem. It was one of their customers. It was a site where they had a couple customers as admins because they had to publish and manage a few customer schedules, but that customer just decided that nobody else needed to be on that server. How do you discipline your customers? I do it by talking. So that's your log lesson of the day. Fiddler is your friend, and you don't have to know what's in the logs. You just have to know what you're looking for in the logs. And that's what's most important. And we've actually tooled for you on GitHub. We have a Logshark. If you haven't used it, it's amazing. So download that. We also have some other third-party log tools that are out there as well. So if you really are trying to find something, we've got ways to make it a lot easier for you. So I don't know how many bronies or like My Little Pony fans we have in here, but friendship is magic. I see a lot of like people like not believing me here, but it is. And the trick here is to make your DBA your best friend. Okay? This is you and your DBA right here. Just you put your faces. And the reason for this is because Tableau is a complicated SQL machine. And we actually optimize our SQL for each database that we connect to. Every connector is different a little bit, and we actually have a whole connectivity team that tries to optimize these things for different databases. And so your DBA is going to be able to look at his side and say, how can I make these queries run faster? Not only that, but if something goes wrong, if you start getting errors, maybe if you just have questions about how to create your custom SQL, your DBA is going to be the guy or girl to ask. So I can't stress this enough. Make sure to make friends not only with your DBA, but I would just extend that out to just like IT in general. And I've heard a lot at Doctor, I've heard a lot of people say, you know, my IT sucks. And I'm like, okay. That's a really common issue that we have as admins. They don't want to listen to us because they have enough going on in their network. You know, they don't see it as a priority. And if you're struggling with this, please reach out to us. Here at Tableau, we are very familiar with this issue, and we connect people. So we get on phone calls with your DBA, with your VP, with you, and then we all get on the same page, and friendship is magic. All right. So at this point, you have all leveled up as server admins. And you will get a sticker when you leave for your badge. They're out in the front. So just make sure to get one of those. But just to summarize, this is what we covered. And I'm going to go back to this in a second, but I want to show you this supplemental content because this is the bread and butter, especially the very first link, the Everybody's Install Guide. Read that.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's amazing. And actually, really, all of the links are good, but you can't read everything. So.
Well, you can if you want to.
Yes, exactly. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to move into the question section of this talk. And we do have some handheld mics, so we'll pass those around. Just please wait to start asking your question until you have the mic, because this is being recorded, so it's a lot easier to hear.
And first, I'm going to go ahead and summarize what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yep. So first and foremost, we covered using SSL on your gateway to establish trust and security. Then we talked about using project-level permissions for imposing your data governance policy. We talked about groups and sites and the important differences between the two. We talked about using an external identity store and integrating your SSO to make it easy to access Tableau for your users. We talked about being lazy with the REST API. We talked about making sure that we have a backup so we don't end up with egg on our face. Then we talked about giving content a shelf life because nobody really likes clutter. Then we talked about getting to know your back-end Postgres repository. Enough said there. Then about dedicating your backgrounders so that your extracts aren't causing detrimental performance issues. And then finally, we talked a bit about self-service log analysis and how we don't really need to know anything about the logs to find what we're looking for in the logs, which is kind of great when you don't really need to know anything, right? Cool. So what we're going to do is move on to questions. And we'll just put this slide up here because I like the icon.
Oh, you already got one.
All right.
So we're from Norwegian Cruise Lines. We rolled out in February. Big fan of using the project level permissions, but the projects in projects doesn't have the capability to break permission inheritance. So it's really just a container more than it is a way to implement more security underneath when you have subgroups in each department. Any chance that that's on the roadmap?
Yes.
Anytime soon?
Sorry, I got that question like 3 times yesterday too. So, I mean, yeah, in a word, yes, we're aware. So, yeah, and there's some other cool stuff coming in the future that in 2019 that will really help you, not just with permissions, but presenting your content in a way that's customizable for your user base. So, yeah, we have some cool stuff around there that is coming. So I just ask you to please be patient. And we'll get to it, we know.
Also, I would add there that our ideas forum is a great place for you to go and upvote ideas. And if you have an idea, just put it out there, because our dev team, every time we try and create a new version, we go through that and we look at what our customers are asking for. So we want to hear from you.
Yeah, if you don't tell us that something's wrong or you need something new, chances are we won't know, so please tell us.
Hi, just wanted to check with you on the dedicated backgrounder services. Is it still license-based? Because what we were told is that we have to buy additional licenses for core-based licenses. Is it still the same, or we can just spin up a server?
So your question is, do you
Dedicated
need a different type
backgrounder
of
service.
license for TSM?
So we have a 8-core, two dual machines basically, but we wanted to spin up additional backgrounder servers.
Yes, so you would, if you added a second node, then you would need to get an additional core license for that node. Another option is to schedule your backgrounders in the evening and add backgrounders at night.
That's not possible.
So that's the only way to really
Business
get around
needs
the
data.
core. Yeah, you would need to get more.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can we limit the access rights of the site admin? It's because they have almost the same rights as the server admin, which is very powerful.
Yeah, site admin is meant to be a powerful role. It's a at the least, it's a content administrator. You can limit some of their abilities, for example, to add or remove users. Is there a specific task that you want to ban them from, basically?
Like the delete. We don't want them to delete workbook or like some users or by accident, just like Sarah mentioned before.
Yeah, so yeah, we can disable their ability to add or remove users, but because the site admin is by definition a content administrator, like being able to add or remove workbooks is kind of inherent to their role. I know that is something that we're always evaluating what the roles are and what permissions they have. So I'd encourage you, again, to submit feedback to our feature forum and let us know about your needs. But yeah, currently we don't have any way to limit that. I would say, though, that if you do have a site admin that keeps deleting content, don't make them a site admin.
Hear you. Thank you.
As you said, there is a way to restrict site admins to add and remove users. Is it a backend change, or is it something on the server side?
You have to be a full server admin,
Yeah.
and it is on the settings page.
Okay, fine.
It's just a little general settings,
Yeah,
restriction.
Thanks.
Got one. Oh, cool.
Back to the Postgres database, what we try to get to is we're asked about getting load times for individual views. And I know there's an admin view that shows that, but do you have any, you can't really alert or anything based on that. Do you have any resources that you could point
So
to?
actually, that's a really great question because it lets me talk up a good friend of mine at Tableau named Matt Coles. Matt Coles is awesome because he has gone out on the community and created some data sources for you that you can download to connect to your Postgres on your server, where all the necessary joins are already there so that you can build views off that. So you can go out and do that if you'd like. Alternatively, there's some other great community vizzes out there that you can plug into our Postgres. Mark Jacksman at Piedmont Healthcare has built pretty much the comprehensive admin interface workbook view that'll give you more information than you probably ever need to know about your Tableau server. But if you're looking to just build something quick and dirty and easy just to get a better insight on things, check out those Matt Coles data sources. They're out on the community. Yep. And there's lots of great stuff in the community. So don't be afraid of the community.
Yeah,
They're
I'm
there to
pretty
help
sure
you.
his session is like an advanced session, but just watch it later.
Yeah.
It's great. And you can set a data-driven alert to his viz. So if a load time goes above a certain threshold, then you can get an email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. So we have named licenses, and one of the common questions I get from my boss is, who has access to the server? Is there an easy way to get an audit report that I can print or download and send to my boss so he doesn't have to log into admin?
I mean, you can, definitely. It's
Yeah, how
all
do you
in
do it?
Postgres. And there's, just definitely go on the community, get those joins, and then you can start exploring. the biggest issue is trying to figure out what to join to what in Postgres to give him that answer. Because it's like, well, do you want to know every user, or do you want to know who's logged in the past 30 days? Do you want to know who's the big publisher?
Every user has taken up a license.
Okay, yeah, then you can do that.
Postgres.
And underneath our user interface, a lot of that JavaScript is fed by XML. So if you pull like a fiddler trace, you'll see like a users.xml. You can always just parse that into a list if you're wanting to do something more programmatic.
Low tech.
Low tech, very low tech, yeah.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I would say grab it from our backend repository. So.
We got one over here.
On regarding the same license question, so we have given license to a few users, and we wanted to see like if they have not activated for last 60 days. We have given them the license and they have activated and they have not used it for 60 days. If we need to prepare a report, is there a way like from Postgres we can get this, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You could, it's all the login data's there, the last sign in, so you can definitely tell.
Yeah, we have a whole series of tables that start with the word hist, as in history, so H-I-S-T. So if you need auditability like that, there's a ton of stuff that's stored there in that repository. And again, Matt Coles has put that connector, that pre-built connection with all the joins you need in place to build a view like you're talking about. So.
Okay, and the other one was like if there are long-running extracts, we are moving towards AWS, but in the on-prem, we do not want to expand like more nodes or anything. We just want to manage the environment for now. So there are still issues like long-running extracts, and that takes time. It's not irregular, but it happens once in a while. But we don't want to kill the extract. It's if we kill the extract, or reboot the server, we do not want to do it on like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. time in the day. So what is the option with?
There's a lot of things that you can do to investigate like a long-running extract. My first step is usually to put desktop on the server machine and run the extract through desktop to see if it's slow in desktop as well. Because if it's slow in desktop, it's going to be slow in server. But if it's fast in desktop and slow in server, then what you would want to do is take a performance recording of the extract refresh in desktop, and then a performance recording in server, and send that to us. And we'll look at it and help you.
Yeah, my first step is to throw money at it. No, seriously though, especially if you're on AWS and you're talking about an extract, IOPS are important. Faster we can read and write to that disk, faster you're going to be able to get that extract onto the disk and out of the disk and into memory. And then the other big limitation also is, how many rows per second can your database spit at us? So those are the two biggest causes. Is your disk fast enough, and is your database fast enough? Beyond that, there is, like Sarah said, there's some other ways to investigate it. But those are the two places I look first, and frankly, sometimes the answer is just throw money at it so it's performant enough. So
He's a sales guy.
that's my solution to everything, throw money at it. So.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for your insights. I have recently taken up a Tableau admin position. I didn't get a chance to take a knowledge transfer from the previous guy. So I want to know whether we have some backup set up there or not.
Are you on Windows?
Yeah.
So I would say check Task Scheduler, see if you've got like a batch file that's running on a regular basis. You can also search for .tsbak files, tsback. And if you find a bunch of those, or hopefully they're on a file share and not on the same drive as Sarah mentioned as the rest of the server, but search for the tsback files. If you find a bunch, chances are they're either really old and the former admin was doing it manually, or there's a script out there somewhere that's already automated it for you.
Okay. Thank you. And I have another small doubt. Regarding the nodes, we have like 16 core, 2 nodes. And if I want to add one more node, do I need to do any synchronization between the nodes, like when something is deleted from one node?
No, that
No.
happens automatically.
Yeah, it's all automatic. Yeah.
So how do I add a node?
How do you add a node? Are you on 2018 or are you on
10.5.
10.1.5? So you would need to stop your server, install the worker software on your node, and then go into the Tableau Server configuration window on your primary, and then add the worker and configure what services you want. And then you're going to start things up again, and it's going to take a while to synchronize. But once that's done, you'll have 3 nodes.
So I don't need to buy anything. I can just.
No.
If you're on a core license and you're currently on 16 core with 2 nodes, so you've got 8 core and 8 core, you'll need more core to get another node. So, yeah. Now, if you're just trying to do HA with prior to 2018 and TSM, then you can do a gateway machine that doesn't consume any licenses and 2 worker nodes. But if you're looking at doing 3 full nodes, yeah, you would need an additional 8 core.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Are you good? Okay.
Hi. Okay, I'm running high availability 3-node, 1 gateway, and 2 workers. If I would throw my backgrounders all on one server and Viz on the other, how's my high availability? Is there? Because I'd be losing my backgrounders.
Well, if all your backgrounders are on one node, and then as long as you have all the other services on both nodes, you're still on HA basically. But if the one node with backgrounders goes down, well, then now you don't have backgrounders. That being said, though, something you'll want to look at when you upgrade to 2018.2 and later is Tableau Services Manager, TSM, changes the way we can deploy HA. So no longer is the gateway basically a machine that's sitting there doing very little except cluster coordination, licensing, and gateway. Now we kind of have 3 identical nodes. Now again though, if you have 16 core, you would need 24 core, because anytime you start throwing VizQL or backgrounders, things like that, that consumes licenses. But yeah, if you have all your backgrounders on one node, and that goes down, and you're in HA, you're still going to have, everything's going to still operate normally on that single node, but you won't be able to refresh extracts until that other node comes back up. So another thing you can look at if you're on like a role-based licensing is even with HA, you could still go and add a dedicated backgrounder machine. So just sitting out there and not doing anything else except backgrounder. So.
Around 1 core license, so.
Yeah. It's never too late to switch, though.
Hi. I work for a large organization, and we can't actually copy any third-party software to analyze our logs. Do you guys have any plans to roll out something included into your package to do that in replacement to Fiddler?
I think so, but it's
Yeah.
it's too soon to say anything. But Logshark is supported. It is a Tableau product. So even though it is on GitHub, it's still completely supported by Tableau.
Yeah, it's an official tool. I mean, and it's maintained by development because it's something that they use internally as well. So it is a fully supported thing. And if like whoever needs to authorize you to install that needs like, you know, word of God or whatever, email me. I'll tell them. It's supported. You're okay.
Yeah.
So seriously, it won't hurt you. We're not collecting your credit card data. No microtransactions.
No phone home.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding the extract notification if the extract got failed. So whoever is published and whoever has created the extract or data source, whatever the workbook, only that person will be getting the notification saying that the extract got failed. So I want it to go to entire the dev team or whoever, because the extracts will be running at the morning 4 a.m. So if it is failed, I get notification at the morning 4 a.m. So I cannot look at 4 a.m. right to refresh it again. So it should go to the team, entire team, or the offshoot team, or whoever. I mean, they can refresh it again. So now it is like one person has to look into the extract, whether it is running or raw or getting failed. So what is the best solution you can give?
Viz alerts. Go out to GitHub, find Viz alerts. Viz alerts allows you to set conditional triggers based on what's happening in data, and then fire off like an email. So if you have like an IT response team for that handles things like those extracts or you know, database issues, what you'd want to do is you'd connect to your backend Postgres on the Tableau server, and then you would configure a Viz alert that you know, whatever condition it is for that extract, fire off an email or a notification, send something to PagerDuty to text someone. Viz alerts is really cool because it is a programmatic approach to conditional alerting. So we have built-in alerts in our subscriptions that can be based on thresholds. So that's cool. But as the kind of person who was up here saying REST API, REST API, REST API, I really like Viz alerts because it allows me to, as an admin, create really complex workflows based on conditions detected in the data on Tableau Server. And that can be used both for either our own backend repository or your own data as well.
So Viz alerts is a third-party application, or how?
Viz alerts is what is Viz alerts? It was like a hackathon project we put on our GitHub. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of awesome. Like we have it internally at
yeah,
Tableau.
we use it very extensively.
If you like have a data source that becomes stale, it just sends you an email and it's like, we know you're a wonderful person and you care about your server, but this might need to be deleted. And if you don't respond to the email, it will get deleted.
Yeah.
So it's that automated. And you're putting onus on the person who published that, essentially. You don't have to take it that far, but I love it. I love getting those emails because I'm like, okay, yeah, delete that. But this, oh, let me respond.
Yeah, it makes life for your users and for you a lot easier for removing stale content or triggering. You can even tie Viz Alert into ETL jobs, things like that. Because again, it is a programmatic interface that you can essentially extend to do all kinds of cool stuff. It definitely helps us out at Tableau because we have something like 20,000 workbooks on our Tableau server, minimally. And they can get pretty stale because really, who wants to see fitness challenge data from 2012? So
I kind of do.
And it's like
nerd.
Based on the extract failure, I want to set it up like the subscription notification. If the extract failure got failed, I don't want to send the subscription email. So is there any way like, okay, if the extract got failed, okay, I want to stop the subscriptions?
Yeah, that would be Viz Alert. Yeah. I mean, that'd be the best way to do that.
Viz alerts will stop the subscriptions also?
Yeah, Viz Alerts is separate from subscriptions. Viz Alerts, again, it's a kind of a framework where you can tie into Tableau, detect conditions in the data. So like, we're going to flag the extract failed in the repository. Once it detects that, you can have it do whatever workflow you'd like. Like I said, whether it's sending an email or sending a text message or, distributing cat food from one of those little automated dispensers, whatever you want to do with it, it's pretty cool. So.
And like, I just want to know from the audience, is it like how they are dealing with the same issue what I'm facing? Is there anyone like who can give how they are maintaining
Have a brain date with this guy if you want. I think that's the perfect opportunity for that. Yeah. Really.
So there are a lot of admins here, so I just want to know like how they are dealing with this. Is there anyone to?
I think maybe you should just take that offline. Yeah, and we'll take another question. Yeah. But
Thank you.
Hang out with this guy later.
Hi guys, thanks. Over at Bank of America, we have a very large Tableau rollout, but we've been having issues with backgrounders getting too busy. We've done our best to scale out the schedules and space things out, but more generally, in your newer versions, your backgrounders are going to be very busy. They work on extracts, subscriptions, they're going to do prep flows, and data-driven alerts as well, right?
And AD sync.
And there you go. And those could be a second or two, but if you have many of them, like data-driven alerts are exclusively during business hours. That's going to take time in the queue, right?
Yep.
Is there going to be any technology or features out there that we're going to be able to dedicate a backgrounder just for these small tasks, not just running serial in parallel, where we can nominate on a schedule, this backgrounder is just going to handle those little jobs? Any ideas to that?
There's nothing currently on the roadmap for that. You may want to look at making use of our extract API because you could do something standalone where it builds the extracts on a different machine, or maybe on your ETL machine, depending on the kind of capacity you have. Yeah. You can tie in, so rather than us pulling a lot of that data, you could offload some of that to push it through our extract API and push that up to Tableau Server, so that's one potential option. Honestly, because of who you are and the complexity of your deployment that I'm well aware of,
that's why I'm
I would say that we would, the best thing to do is if we really want to dig into this is probably reach out to your rep and tell them to get your SC poking my team, which is strategic sales consulting. And we can do some performance investigation and see if there's things that we can do to mitigate that, and then also just help you scale. We're always interested in at-scale deployments, basically. So I'm sure we would be happy to pull in some people to take a look and see how can we best tune. Since there's so many variables, it's it's not an art. There really is a science behind it. So I'm not going to spend the next 3 hours in this session talking to you about that particular question. But yeah, reach out to us next week.
You're saying you don't have a magic switch that y'all can come and just
They
flip?
didn't give me a magic wand. I don't know.
All right, thanks, guys.
I got
They gave me one, but it was a total lie. So, but I'm really gullible. So
That's true.
yeah.
Hi guys, it's a great session. So my question is about the TSM maintenance backup. I heard somewhere that you can't customize the location of where the backup goes to right now. So do you know anything about that, or if that's coming?
So what we do internally to mitigate that is I'll have a script that will run the backup, and then it immediately does a copy to my file share. So it's all in one script, and I don't have to worry about, it's only there while it's being created, and then it's copied right off.
Okay, but then will you be able to customize the location? Is that?
I think that's coming, but I'm not sure
It
when.
was an oversight that you can't, so yes, we will.
Oh, you can, okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so that might already be out then, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks, guys. One of the issues that we have is people publishing desktop users publish data sources as well. Is there a way to limit them to, say, publish workbooks but not a data source?
Oh,
I don't think you can.
yeah, you can do project-based, and yeah, you can, I don't know though, can you actually prevent them from publishing data sources? Because you can tell them whether they can connect or edit, but I don't know if you can prevent them from.
Because if they have published.
If they have published, it covers both workbook and data sources.
So what you want to get Viz alerts so that you can be notified, or they can be notified when your users are publishing that you don't want, and then just work with them. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to punish bad user behavior in Tableau because we try to be really permissive and flexible, and permissive and flexible makes it hard to spank your users when they're naughty. So.
Is it ever going to be possible to share a data source between sites?
No.
No. On
Never.
purpose.
On purpose, yeah.
All right. This is a never-ending question, so just tell me not to. Just move on if you don't want to answer it. When do you decide that projects are better than sites? Is this the situation when you have data sources that are shared?
When do you decide if projects are better than sites? Yeah, I mean, if you've got to share a lot of things between projects like data sources and users and content, then you should probably be using projects. If you're using sites for that, then you're using sites wrong. Sites are intentionally wholly separated containers. It allows us to do things like PCI and HIPAA compliance in Tableau Server. So we will never traverse data between sites. However, project, sure, yeah. I mean, traverse all you like. One of the things that I like to do is I'll create a project just for data sources, like sanctioned data sources, and then have because a project can connect. If I have a workbook in one project, I can connect to wherever that data source lives, as long as I have permission to that project. So does that help at all, or?
It does. We're a big campus, so we have, each group wants to own everything within their site.
Okay.
So we're trying to restrict it like by the college level and down, push it down, let them enforce their own site.
You can use sites for organization, but yeah, there is a drawback in that you can't share data across them. So if there's a lot of duplicative data, then that's potentially a problem. Also depends though, like if it's like a 10 megabyte extract, whatever. And if it's on 3 separate sites, as a different copy.
It's the big extracts that are killing us.
It's the extracts that are killing you? Yeah. One thing you could do is maybe use our document API to pull down, to have that extract on one site, and then pull that down and then push it up to the other 2 sites. But I mean, that's going to be, you know, you're doing a little Python or something. So, and that's a little hacky. So you could do it. I've seen people do it. It's not really my preference, but I do understand the pain there when you're managing lots and lots of projects. So.
Thanks.
Can we download the traffic to view dashboard and customize it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How can we do that? Because there's no download button, or if there's a download, there's no option for workbook.
There should be a download
There should
button
be a
on every
download button.
workbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you download the workbook
And
for
you
that?
can download your data sources too through Server.
Yeah.
Maybe just Google it. There's lots of stuff on the forum.
Yeah, it is in documentation where you can grab the Twibix for the.
Because I just saw the PDF, but I don't see the workbook option. So.
Oh, it's there.
It should be there.
it is
Yeah,
there.
I don't know. Yeah, it should be there.
Thank
So
you.
if it's not, file as a work case, maybe you run into a defect.
Oh, are you talking about admin views? Okay, so your admin view workbook is on your machine. It's just hidden, and we say where it is online. So it is a .twibix, and that admin view is just stored on your server. So the path is on our docs. Yep.
I have a question with the TSM. When we run a TSM command, we have to use the password. And
right.
We don't want to use the password because, you know, it's an admin password. And with 2018.2, the password is like it has a local admin account.
So you should be able to encrypt your passwords now. It's a new feature. Okay. So just look for that and edit your scripts so you're using that.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're also aware of the need for things like headless accounts and elevated privilege accounts, and that is something that we know that many of you need. We are looking at options in the future for how to support that in a sensible way. No timeline on that, no promises. I can't promise you anything, but we are aware of the need. Yeah. Now, we're aware of a lot of these needs, so they are things that are being looked at. And, you know, bear with it. TSM is pretty much brand new, so, you know, for as much work as we've done over a couple years, a lot of that was to fully modernize how our cluster stack really works. So there's a lot of moving pieces in TSM. It's not just the pretty UI and the command line. So definitely, you know, give us that feedback if you need features like that. Put it on the ideas forum, vote for them if they're already out there, so that way we know how to prioritize throwing money at problems. So.
Yep.
Hey, I'm a newer admin, but we for the last upgrade, I think it's like 2018.2 to the next one. We basically just replicated the server and then tested the upgrade, but the servers were linked together, so when I stopped one, it would stop the other. Is there a reason for that, or like a way that we could test upgrades? Might be.
I guess I'm not understanding.
How did you manage to do that?
See, well, it's just we copied it, you know, and put it on a new, copy the exact software and put it on a new server, and then try to test the upgrade on a different server. So it might, you know, like server one Tableau, and then copy
it
over to
affected
server.
both servers?
Yeah. So when we stopped one, it would stop the other.
That's kind of cool.
I don't know how you did that.
I have no idea how you manage that. That's kind of cool though.
You should talk to us offline, and we'll help you because that's really interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. That's a really unique problem to have.
We applied the upgrade, you know, on the regular server without testing it because we just went for it and it worked fine, so it was good.
Well, that's good.
But anyways.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I could think of is somehow.
If it's replicating the command prompt.
Yeah, and if it's like maybe if it's like. No, I don't. I know.
Well, I know. I mean, there's a lot of configurations behind the scenes. You know, it's pointing to different. We have like a web appliance, and it's got all. You know, it's configured. It was configured the same, so I'm not sure. There's some disruption between there.
Yeah, it may have been like a thing where it kind of like pushed out the command to both machines because you had a duplicate config. Honestly, we'd probably have to do an RCA to figure it out, but that is really interesting. Don't do it.
Don't do it again.
Don't do it again. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
But congratulations on a problem I've never even heard of.
Oh yeah, we have one way over here.
So we have about 2/3 of our desktop users are actively using it, and the other 1/3 are like barely ever publishing. Is there any licensing model that would kind of let us check in, check out those licenses to people?
No.
I mean, you can semi-automate it, though,
I mean,
with
you
the
can
REST API.
yeah, you can REST API it. That's more of like an account rep conversation. They'll know what's permissible and what's not with licensing in detail. And they may have some SKUs that allow you a little bit more flexibility. I don't honestly know. Generally, I mean, I get that you want to check in and check out. What you may consider is users that are not really making use of desktop is give them the ability to do web authoring. And then if they want desktop back, then they can request it from you. I would probably go that route because web authoring, it's not 100% feature complete with desktop, but it will be in the future. And we're always adding stuff to it. And if your users are like, oh, I don't need desktop all the time, then web authoring is more than enough for them probably. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other ones? We're running out of time, but we move.
So we have SSO implemented at the on-prem, but when we have it, it is working on the on-premise server, but when we do in the AWS, it's not working. I have not started troubleshooting it, so where do you suggest me to start looking if SSO was working and it not work? To log into the server, so instead of them directly taking, if just publish to the URL and it takes them directly into the publish in the server instead of giving their, now into AWS they have to give their user ID and password and then go in and publish it.
Mm-hmm.
But in on-prem, it's once they give the server name, we are using Active Directory.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to see like if SSO is not working in the other like into the AWS instance. So where do you should I look into the Tableau Server instance?
What are you using for SSO?
SAML.
Okay. What's your SAML provider?
I'm not sure. It's
And so your SAML is working
on-prem, but
on-prem.
not
Yeah.
AWS.
But not AWS. Probably a routing issue.
Routing, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where your SAML lives, but if it's an internal thing and then you're trying to point AWS at it, you may need to, in AWS, there's access policies that you may need to create to whitelist your SAML provider. You may have to open your firewall to let your SAML provider out without doing a little investigation and taking a look at your environment. It's kind of hard for me to say, but that is something that if you reach out to your sales consultant or just even your account rep can point you in the right direction with your sales consultant, they should be able to help untangle that. So we can take a look at it for you.
Sure. And the last one I had was like why the data sources cannot be shared between the sites. That was a question I was asked to ask.
It's intentional. It's because the whole design behind sites is to prevent any content from traversing that line.
It was a long-running feature request back when server first began because we didn't have it. And so people couldn't be HIPAA compliant because they have to have, patient data in a separate area or PII, government agencies. You need to have very siloed data.
It's a hard wall because we don't want there to be any possibility that somebody could accidentally push data across sites. But yeah, it's an intentional part of the design, and it's not going to change. So.
But we gotta end here. So I'm just gonna say thank you.
Sure. I just want to have the email ID.
Let's do this offline.
We can email IDs if you can
come
put
up here and talk to us.
Yeah, just talk about that.